Good evening, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of June 21st, 2023. The first item of business is the approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, we have no changes at this time.
Any changes from commissioners?
Move approval. Second.
It was moved by Commissioner Schindler and seconded by Commissioner Scanlon. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is 3, and that is the consent agenda items are considered routine and will be enacted with a single motion without discussion unless a commissioner or a citizen requests to have any item separately considered. It will then be moved to the land use action items for consideration. Can I get a motion to approve minutes of June 7th, 2023 regular meeting?
So moved. Second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Schindler and seconded by Commissioner Scanlon. Any comments or discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Brings us to number 4, public hearings, which there are none tonight. So we will go on to number 5, which is the land use action items. 5A, higher ground daycare conditional use permit and a site plan building permit authorization. Presenter is Alex Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. As noted, we are seeking 2 actions this evening. One is a recommendation on the conditional use permit, and the second is on a site plan building permit authorization for a small addition at 14605 Glacier Avenue. You're familiar with the site. You just saw it on June 7th. For reference, the site to the south was created in 2019 through a subdivision and is also a conditional use permit for a daycare. It's Harding Academy. On June 7th, the public hearing was held. There were a couple of comments. You've got some staff responses back within the staff memo. The 2 main comments at the public hearing were about traffic on 145th onto Cedar and about the type of land use. Specifically, I wanted to linger on this screen for the type of land use. The city sets, or the zoning is limited business, and the city sets the zoning but does not determine the number of uses of a specific business within the city. So 2 daycares would be permitted adjacent to one another. That is not dictated by the zoning code. There were a couple of changes to the site plan, mainly clarifications since the public hearing. The big item you'll note on the eastern side of the site is some stormwater pieces. These are still being finalized as the engineers work to determine exactly how much water will need to be treated. Essentially, the applicant needs to treat the water from the disturbance area, which is just the 755 square foot addition, the couple of playgrounds, and a couple of sheds. So there's not a lot of disturbance in comparison to most of our sites. Thus, this won't need an extensive rain garden or extensive stormwater system. A rain garden will likely be able to suffice. We may not need to have the 2 rain gardens as shown on this plan. You'll see one on the middle island and then on the southern island. It may be that only a single one is required. Right now, that is something that the applicant is working with the city engineer on to determine just on the total amount of flow that will be needed. The civil plan has not been updated yet. That is one of the items that staff is seeking for updates as they finalize their stormwater system. We will want to see that prior to city council action. However, it is the same that the planning commission saw at the prior meeting. The landscape plan has been updated, mainly to update some species. We are going to be looking for a little bit of additional clarity just on which trees are existing, which trees are being planted, and what new landscaping is being added, as right now it's difficult to discern. Additionally, we still strongly encourage looking at some of the health of the species. We've done a site visit, or natural resources staff has done a site visit, and there are some problematic species with buckthorn and some dead trees on the site. They may be on some of the adjacent sites as well, particularly to the north, as that property line is clearly marked and may be somewhere in between that. So they will need, once they get the property line staked for the project, do a health assessment on all the trees and remove any of the adverse species or scrub species that have come up. Prior to city council action, we will look for just a little bit of additional detail. We did get an updated planning schedule. We have one item that I noted in the staff report and in the city engineer's report. We would like to see one species changed, as it is an invasive within this area. It is commonly used, however, it can lead to additional invasives. This species in particular in itself won't be a problem, but it may propagate in additional species that are already here. So this is a species that is man-made, and it can help propagate others that are already here, rather than this one likely wouldn't spread in itself. There were some minor changes that have occurred to the interior floor plan. These are still being finalized. Planning Commission and staff are not typically viewing at this level of detail. So the total square footage of every room can adjust. We know that we have enough in parking, as noted previously. We're over double parked on the site. One other item with that I wanted to mention is if for some reason the site plan were to be amended to bump out some of that rain garden into two of the parking stalls, say on the western side of, I'm gonna scroll back just so you can see what I'm referring to, into say these two parking stalls here, the site would still be adequately parked for the use, as there is more than double the parking requirement, and we haven't even done a what we refer to as a net out, the areas that are hallways, utility rooms, spaces that don't actually require parking for the building's use, which we typically do on most structures. The upstairs, again, was slightly amended. Some hallways were added, some additional rooms, but ultimately this is relatively minor and can still be adjusted prior to the building permit. I'm going to scroll back to the overall view here momentarily. To answer the question on traffic, the city engineer had a pretty extensive response within the staff memo. There is also the city engineer's memo with the full traffic study. The long and short of it is this area was studied with Cider Ridge and with this property at full use and with Hardeen at full use. While there is going to be a reduction in level of service turning left southbound onto Cedar from 145th, it just goes from a B to a C, which means it would take around 35 extra seconds. So it's not significant, but you may end up having to wait through an additional light, essentially. So the area was studied extensively at that time and was found to be adequate. The exterior building has not been amended since the prior, since Planning Commission side of the public hearing. They are matching materials. The one piece that staff has wanted to note is that two sheds were noticed on the plan. They were noted as green on the plan previously, so I did not note them until they were called out. That was some of the additional detail we were looking for. What are these boxes on the plan? And those two sheds will need to meet the material standards of the building, similar to how the trash enclosure does. So the applicant has provided the details on the trash enclosure and the details on the aluminum fence. There were no concerns about noise, so staff has not made a recommendation for opaque fencing or solid barrier fencing to block noise, particularly to the neighborhood to the east, since that was not something that was required for Hardeen and was suggested here, but the neighbors and Planning Commission did not express concerns over that, so we have not included that condition. We will look prior to City Council action for the same type of details we've gotten on the dumpster for those two sheds. We would allow for asphalt shingled roof, but we would seek to have something similar to that brick enclosure that you're seeing for the trash. With that, if there are any questions, I believe the applicant is present this evening. They are from higher ground. We do have two actions that we are seeking a recommendation on from the Planning Commission.
Commissioners, any questions for Alex? Well, I want to be educated on something, so I'm going to ask you a question about, I'm assuming a rain garden is just what it sounds like, but can you go into detail a little bit about what a rain garden really does or looks like?
Chair Kurtz, I'm going to do my best with that. I'm certainly not the expert on it, and it's been some time since I've actually studied it. Essentially, what their attempt to do is have drought-tolerant and then flood-tolerant plants. They're a low spot in the ground where the water is able to pool and essentially be retained for a period of time and hopefully soak into the groundwater or be soaked into those plants rather than needing to flow off-site. We have rain garden program here with the City of Apple Valley, so if you really want to get into it, you can actually receive a grant through our Natural Resources Department to put one in your yard. They are a good way of treating stormwater before it gets, hopefully, to the street, essentially.
Do we have a lot of those in Napa Valley?
I think they're becoming more popular over time. I wouldn't know the number. I know that we do probably around 6 to 8 grants a year.
Interesting, thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Mulholland?
Madam Chair, Alex, with respect to, I know that the concern was expressed and it's been addressed with respect to left turns off of Cedar Avenue. If for some reason that becomes a problem with the duration of the light, is that something that is continually studied and adjusted? Should there be a need for a longer light time or something like that?
Chairman Holwald, I'm going to defer to the Assistant City Engineer on that. I know it does require coordination with Dakota County as they manage Cedar.
Sure.
So there isn't a little bit of a difficulty because they're managing Cedar and then city roadway.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, yeah, basically what Alex said, we would defer to Dakota County to manage the streetlight and the timings. The study that we did in 2019 for the development would have been just to evaluate those buildings at full capacity. And since they'll be at full capacity, we've kind of stated that no additional mitigation would be required at this time. And then anything moving forward would pass through Dakota County. Likely we would get the complaint or concern, and then we would work with Dakota County, but they would lead any charges, just with Cedar Avenue being such a major thoroughfare.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Kurtz, Commissioner Holwald, I spoke with the neighboring property, Hardin, about this as well. One of the key points that I expressed to them that I think is important on the traffic side of things is a basic rule of thumb is you don't, the last user into an area is not responsible for all of the mitigation as it comes in. You need to mitigate when your traffic pushes it over. And this is not going to be a high traffic user in comparison to, say, the coffee user that warranted that traffic study.
Anyone else? If not, what is the motion, if anybody wants to make one?
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of conditional use permit for a daycare facility at 14605 Glacier Avenue, subject to conditions in the draft resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Scanlon and seconded by Commissioner Schindler. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of a site plan and building permit authorization for a 755 square foot addition to 14605 Glacier Avenue, subject to conditions in the draft resolution.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Scanlon and seconded by Commissioner Schindler. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next on our agenda tonight is 5B, and that is Hersi Window Well Variance, and presenter is Kathy Bodmer.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners.
Kathy will usually give her.
So, yeah, I'll start by giving the presentation.
I'm too fast then?
We're just zipping.
I'm sorry.
No,
That's
so
okay.
I'll give the presentation, and then they'll probably have questions, and then ask for your input. So, this is a request for a window well variance. As the chair stated, Saeed Hersi is requesting a variance to decrease the side yard setback for 2 window wells on the east side of his home from 5 feet to 3 feet. The petitioner recently purchased the property at 181 150th Street West, or County Road 42, the frontage road there. The property is zoned R3 single-family residential, which is our typical residential zoning designation in the city. And the section 333 states that window wells must be no closer than 5 feet from a side property line. What the applicant wishes to do is to construct two 36-inch deep, so he would be encroaching into that 5-foot area. So that's the reason for the request. The property is platted as Lot 19, Block 3 of Bob's Garden View, 3rd Edition. This development area is one of the first neighborhoods of Apple Valley. And you'll note that along the east side property line, there's no drainage and utility easement. So any variance, there would not be a need to encroach into a drainage and utility easement. So an area map just to kind of show what's happening. The house is located 6 feet from the side property line. This is kind of a difficult to see, so I'll keep going here. The 3-foot window well then would require a 2-foot variance. One of the notes that I have is that the house was constructed in 1963 and was set back to the side property line in compliance with the ordinance at that time. So the 6-foot setback meets the requirements of the zoning code. However, if this house were to be built today, that setback would be required to be 10 feet and the variance wouldn't be needed, unfortunately. So construction plan showing kind of the layout, again, of the two existing basement windows, and then the stats on what is being proposed for the new egress windows. It's a little bit difficult to see, but there are 2 basement windows there on that east elevation. And then this is a closer view. So you can see that the siding or the stucco side of the house has been modified to accommodate those basement windows. So what the petitioner is asking to be able to do is simply extend that, working with his contractor to place the windows there on that east side. In order to grant a variance, the city reviews the requirements for practical difficulties. The applicant proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, not permitted by the zoning code. Circumstances are unique to the property. The variance will not alter the essential character of the locality, and economic considerations alone do not constitute practical difficulties. So after getting through the definition, then we look at factors. This is another kind of set of tests or criteria that we review. Special conditions apply to the structure, will not be contrary to the intent of the chapter, do not result from actions of the owner applicant. Granting of the variance is not simply a convenience, but is necessary to alleviate a practical difficulty, and the variance requested is a minimum variance necessary. 2 alternatives were discussed as part of this request. One would be to construct no bedroom windows, but the fact of the matter is the bedrooms are in the basement today. So the building official, when he worked with the homeowner and did his inspection, found that the basement bedrooms have been there for a long time, so it's not a new thing. And what the variance would do would be to allow the homeowner to bring that into compliance or to make it a safer condition. The second alternative would be to construct the windows on the front and the back of the home. The back of the home is a challenge because the side yards are narrow, as we discussed. So it would be difficult to get equipment back there. There's air conditioning unit, there's electric that would have to be worked around. In the front, the concern is kind of the aesthetics and the fact that more structural work would have to be done to cut into that siding in order to get the windows to into the home or to construct them. So with that, Madam Chair, staff did make some findings based on the facts of the case, and we offer these for the Planning Commission's recommendation or consideration. The Hersi home was constructed in 1963 and met the building and setback requirements of Ordinance Number 2 for the town of Lebanon. 2 basement windows are currently located on the east side of the home, as we've discussed, and the 2 bedrooms already exist in the basement today. So the variance would allow the new homeowner to place the home in a safe condition. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions. We are recommending approval of the variance.
So Kathy, does the bedrooms need to be changed over to those windows then, to over there? Or are they just fine where they are?
The bedrooms are fine where they are. It's just the installation of the new windows makes them legal
Okay,
under today's code.
okay. Commissioner Pruitt.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Kurtz. And Kathy, quick question on the increased size. I anticipate there would be well covers included over the top to prevent anybody from falling in. And in the theme of safety.
Yes, Commissioner, I'll ask the petitioner to address that.
Okay.
There would have to be some measure of protection, I'm sure, so he can explain that in a little more detail.
Thank you.
Does any commissioner have any more questions for Kathy? No? Okay. Would you like to come up? Your turn now.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Brad.
Hi, Brad.
I own USA Builders and Remodelers, and I was contracted to do the work on this house. This is a county job. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the CDA. They'll allocate funds up to a certain amount for people to fix up their homes if they're low income. And that is the situation here. And we really can't move these windows to the back because of the air conditioner back there and the electrical. And the front, it just wouldn't look right facing the street like that. There's already 2 windows there that exist right now, so that would be the ideal place to put them, to make the windows bigger, and they'll be legal egress windows, so they can get in and get out of in case there's a fire. There is children that are living in those bedrooms right now, and I don't think the homeowner really understands totally what's going on with this, but the county does, and that's why they're recommending that we put 2 egress windows in there.
Any questions for him? Commissioner Scanlon?
Madam Chair, can you address the question that we just had with covers and how that would be?
The covers that are put on there, they have to be able to lift off so a
Right.
child can get out of it. So the covers are just a plastic cover. The covers really mainly what they do is they keep from debris and water going back down into the hole.
Okay, thank you.
Curiosity, but the covers is, I guess, a personal choice, isn't it? I mean, I have.
Personally, it is,
It's a
yes.
personal
It is
choice,
a
isn't it?
personal choice, absolutely. So,
Thank you.
that's it? Nothing else? Nothing else for me? Okay, thank you.
I think it changes things when it's a safety issue.
Yes. And Madam Chair, to follow up what you were saying, one of the things that we were concerned about is that it looked like there was sidewalk along the house here. And if there was a pedestrian way, then there would have to be fencing. So the building official did review that. So that will not be needed in this case. So,
Yes,
Yep, that's fine. Commissioner Maholo?
Madam Chair. Kathy, one quick question. I noticed at the end of the report that it talks, or the staff memo, it talks about this is consistent with other window well variances that
Yes.
have been granted in the last few years.
yes.
And is it for similar reasons like this that they have been granted?
Yes.
So this is
Ver-
consistent with what's been done before?
Yeah, so the fact that the house is sitting at 6 feet seems to be a common theme. And the very the smallest measurement the building official will allow to the property line is 3 feet. So the fact that there's 6 feet available really is a nice situation. So, yeah, the other 2 window well variances, I believe the facts of the case were very much the same, and again, set at 6 feet rather than 10.
What is,
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of the variance to reduce the side yard setback from 5 feet to 3 feet, 2-foot variance to install 2 egress window wells on the east side of the subject home based on the findings listed below items 1 through 3 and subject to the conditions listed below items 1 through 2.
Second.
motion made by Commissioner Scanlon and seconded by Commissioner Schindler. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Brings us to number 6, other business. Mr. Tim Benetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a reminder, your next meeting is not until July 19th, which is normally we have a meeting in the first week. But because of the July 4th holiday, you are getting a week off, so enjoy it well. We'll see you on the 19th, and also on August 2nd. Our council meetings are the 13th of July, followed by July 27th, and fall back to July 4th reminder. Just want to wish everyone a very happy 4th of July weekend for you and all your families. Safe travel if you are traveling, or if you're staying in the city, have fun. I understand this city puts on one heck of a show. I'm going to see if I can come over here, and if you happen to see me stumbling around Rascals or somewhere, please take in the fact that I'm off the clock and that I hope to remember you if it comes down to that. And,
Once you come here for the 4th, you'll never go anywhere else, so.
okay,
We put on a good party.
I hope so.
Me too.
No, and that's all I have. And if you have any more questions, feel free to contact us whenever you need to.
Thank you. Motion?
Move we adjourn?
Second?
Motion made by Commissioner Schindler and seconded by Commissioner Scanlon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. This meeting has adjourned.